Okay, so now we are going to make bias binding, and it's really very simple. I have this piece cut out, and I'm going to show you that in a second, but I am going to show you, this is just a piece of fabric that still has the selvage on it. So the selvage is here and here. And so when you open it up, when you pull it like this, and you pull it like this, there's no stretch at all when you pull it this way. And when you pull it this way, there's a lot of stretch. And when you pull it like this, there's tons of stretch. And so what you're basically doing is we're going to cut the fabric like this, so that when we're going around all those jagged edges, the fabric will be able to pull and go around those pieces much more easily than if we were going to make regular binding where there's very little pull. So I'm just showing this to you. The piece that I have cut here used to have a piece of selvage and the selvage on either end. So I've already cut it. What I suggest doing is starting off with a piece that's as big as your cutting board. So my cutting board is 36 by 24. So I don't ever use a piece that's any bigger than that. And that way I can see exactly what I'm working with right here. So that's why I'm not using a giant piece. I've cut it off and I've trimmed it off so that it's that size. But that's how you're going to be able to tell. This piece I had was just a scrap piece and it didn't have the selvage on it, and that's how I can tell, is because when you pull it like that, there's a lot of stretch. So that's how you determine how to cut it, which direction to cut it. And then what we're going to do is, I have this piece cut, and it doesn't really matter the exact, whoops, I'm throwing things. Okay, so it doesn't really matter exactly how big you have it. I have mine like, I don't know, 20 or 30, 34, and then it's, oh, I don't know, it's like 20 the other direction. So that's about a good size to start. Like I said, just make sure it's not bigger than your table. And so what you're going to do is we're going to be working right here on the left corner. And so like I just talked about my folded corner clipper, that is a 45-degree angle. And a lot of your rulers have 45-degree angles on them. I have a bunch of rulers. This ruler, not kidding you, I bought like 20 years ago when I very first started quilting. I bought it at a Joann's. I was broke, I didn't have any money, and I splurged and got this thing for me because I had been using cardboard when I first started to learn how to quilt. So this one is so special. But anyway, it has a 45-degree angle on it. And so if you don't have, this one is the Perfect 10 ruler, a Creative Grids ruler that I've gotten. And so this one also has the 45-degree angle. And then most of this is the OmniGrid. I bought at the same time that I bought this one. So I've had this one probably 20 years. Isn't that crazy? I probably should get a new one. Anyway, there is a 45-degree angle on that one as well. So a lot of them will have a 45-degree angle on them. And that's what we're cutting. We're cutting at a 45-degree angle. So you can take whatever ruler you have and you can mark it with a friction pen or a regular pen. It doesn't really matter. And you can mark it like that and like that, so you know where you're going to start, or you can use the smaller one. The point I'm getting at is that whatever you have, you can make it work. So you can even fold a piece of paper in half. Let me show you a trick. I haven't left you, I'm coming back. So you can even fold a piece of paper in half if you do not have a big ruler. And you just trim that part off, and you can stick, well, you don't even have to trim it, you can just fold it over. And you can use that guy. So it's not about the tools that you have, because I don't even really like a lot of gadgets. I sew without a lot of gadgets, probably because when I first started I didn't have very much money, and so I just made do. And so you can take this and you can make a line all the way down with your cardboard or your paper or whatever you have. And that's what we're going to start off with. So I'm going to put this paper back down just to show you. We're going to go to the corner. And I'm going to put my ruler down just to keep it flat. And I'm going to use my friction pen. And so now you can see the line. And then I'm going to move all these other ones out of the way so I can show you. And then you're going to use your long ruler and you're going to cut it, that first one on your 45-degree angle. And I'm going to use, for your binding, you can use 2, 2 1/4, or 2 1/2. Those are your typical sizes for cutting binding. I usually use 2 1/2 when I'm cutting just regular old basic binding. And then it also kind of depends on the project that I'm doing. Because this one is so small, I am thinking I'm going to use 2 1/4. And so what that means is we're just going to match 2 1/4 up, and you're going to want to go over just a smidge. Otherwise you have to adjust yourself. And then we're going to go 2 1/4. So there's your first piece. See the stretchy? And then 2 1/4. My camera is in the way a little bit here. Did you see that move? All right, I think we're just about past where my camera's in the way. All right, so there's 2 1/4. And now look at these nice big pieces. So when you get to the center part, then I just go ooch back up. And so that's going to be your longest piece. And see how pretty they are? So once you do all the cutting, all of the rest of it is the same as regular. Oh crap. Did you see what I just did? Look at that. I got to talking. Okay, so we're gonna pick that piece out. So this piece is still good. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna get a nice clean cut. Because I was yakking. I didn't. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do for bias binding, y'all. It's really very simple. And I'm going to show you how to trim off the edges. I'm going to cut just a couple more pieces. This is such a small table runner that we're not going to need very much. Okay, so when we join the two pieces together, what you're going to want to do is make sure that you have a clean cut. And they're just going to go together like that. You can pin them if you want to. I don't normally pin them, but I'm going to pin one just to show you. So we're going to pin it, and then it's going to fold over like that. Well, I guess the pin's too close or too far away. But if you pin it in your 1/4 inch seam and you fold it over, it's going to look just like that. So what I want to do is trim the bottom side this direction. So this one is that way, that one is, whoops, getting tangled here. All those nice big ones that you're doing. And then you're just going to want to put your next one like that, and then your next one like that, until you get your strips. And sometimes I don't use the little small ones. But that's what we're going to do next. So we're going to go to the Juki and we're going to sew these dudes together, and I'm going to show you how to get them all sewn together, and then we're going to press them and get ready to add them to our table. this out of the way. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our strips and we're gonna lay it this way. And then we're gonna lay good side to good side, same as we do other binding. And then we're just going to put the two corners together. And then we're gonna sew them. Oh, I don't think my machine's on, there we go. And I have my stitch length about 2. And so we're gonna sew it just like that. And then when you fold it over, it's gonna look like that. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to the next one. Okay, so I did this on purpose so you could see that the reason why I said just to make sure that you pay attention to your corners. It's not totally necessary that you trim it unless you just want to. I mean, you can, but what I'm going to do is just use this angle here. It doesn't really matter. And then when I get done, I'll just trim it off. But you can trim it off beforehand at the cutting table. Sometimes I am a bit of a directional ding dong and I get confused over there at the table, but when I'm sitting here, I know what to do. And if you notice, I kind of got a little bit crooked right there, which is not really what we want, which is probably why we should trim it beforehand. But anyway, the point is you want to make sure that you leave your tail here, and then your tail sticks out on the bottom right here a little bit, and that'll give you your 1/4 inch. Because then you start sewing where, oops, it moved a little bit. You start sewing where the 2 pieces connect right there. And then you stop sewing where the 2 pieces connect. And I mean right there, where the 2 pieces connect, and then the 2 pieces connect. And so then that looks better. And so we just keep going and going until we get done. And so this one, same thing, we got the little tail sticking out and the little tail sticking out. And there we have that. That one looks good. And this one, okay, look. This does not have the corner going the way we want it to. But that side does. So that just means the other side's going to be wrong when we get there. But it's okay. I'll show you. All right. And so, like I said, I'm kind of doing some of these things on purpose just so you can kind of see how to deal with them if you mess up. So this one, just like this side, we wanted it to go at the angle that direction. And so our little corner clipper, and I'll link this ruler down below for you. So we just can take this and trim it off. But like I said, sometimes the trimming of this, I get confused over there, which direction I want them all to go. And it's okay to get confused. Okay, so as we get ready to do our binding, or press it, this is the easy fun part. I just press where the 2 pieces connect, I press them open so that they're flatter. And then just fold it in half. And so you can make bias binding for quilts. I have done it for quilts, and I like the way it feels when I hand bind with bias binding because it rolls right over and it just feels more natural, like it just goes where you want it to go more naturally. And it is also really great if you are making bags is if you're making quilted bags and you want your seams to, what am I trying to say? If you have to make the binding cover up your raw edges in the inside of your bag, you have to use bias binding, normally speaking, with bags because there's different shapes and whatnot. So this is how you will do that for bags as well. Okay, so now we have our binding strips and our runner, and these spaces are pretty small, so they're actually really small, but that's where we're going to start. We're going to start on an edge that, you know what, let's start right here. Okay, so we're going to start sewing, and I've talked about this in my previous videos, but I'm going to talk about it again. When I cut all of my all of my quilts after they're done with the long arm quilter or quilting, I'm the quilter. I cut where the edge of the front is, the quilt top. I cut about in between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch away. So that leaves the back on there, and then I leave that much around. I never cut it right on the quilt edge. I know a lot of people do that, and I just prefer not to. I think that it feels better when you get your binding attached, and I'm going to put a little piece on here. So I'm going to show you. I attach it. About the width of the Juki has a really small little foot here, and so I attach it with the same with it. Like I said, it's just a little bit less than, it's a scant quarter, I guess was what you would say. And so then when you fold it over to do your hand binding, and then you fold it over again, and then you're going to meet up with that line when you fold over to the back to do the hand binding, and then I line it immediately up with that line in the back, and then it is completely full. There's no emptiness, and I like the way that it feels better when that space is taken up with binding, or the batting, I'm sorry. And so that's why I do it. I've done this for a very long time. I just decided in the very beginning that I just didn't like the way that it felt with that empty space there. So that's what I do. So that's what we are going to do here. And when you do the edges of a traditional quilt, where it just has the 4 corners, you go to the edge, you go about 1/4 of an inch away. I misplaced my marking tool. Just a moment. I don't know what I did with my black one, but here's my red one. So we're going to take, so the corner here, we're going to mark about 1/4 of an inch in. And what I usually actually do is for any of the ends, so it's from the end of the fabric of the quilt top here in 1/4. And like I said, maybe just a little bit less than 1/4. That's where I'm going to stop, and then I'm going to pivot this way. So I'm not going to show you up close every single time, but that's basically what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to keep my stitch right there, and when I get to that point, I've been doing this for a really long time, so I'm a pretty good judge of where that point is. But that's basically what we're going to be doing. Is so here we're going to stop about there, and then we're going to keep coming, and then from here we're going to stop about there, and we're going to keep going. So in a nutshell, that is what we're going to be doing. So like I said, because it's going to be under the needle, you're not going to see exactly, but I wanted to show you that that's exactly what we're going to be doing. Okay, I have the camera at a little bit of a different angle just so you can see a little bit better. So where we just marked those marks with the marking pen, that's where I'm going to stop, and I've just pulled up my presser foot, and then I'm just going to gently move my binding over. I'm not really going to do any folding or anything. I'm just going to move it over until I get to the next little point here. And then I'm going to lift up, and I'm going to rotate again. And because we have this bias binding, it just kind of goes around the corner. And then same thing, just line it up there. And so it's a little bit tedious, but definitely not hard. And so what it's going to do then is when you get ready to go do your hand binding, it's pretty much already folding over. See how it looks right there and right there? So it's already has the natural fold, and then you're just going to be able to fold it over. And then when you fold it over, you're going to be able to see that. So it looks really good, and it's very easy. You just have to kind of go slow, but it's definitely doable. Okay, so let's keep going. I just wanted to make sure you could see up close. Okay, so we're going to put our needle back in, and we just went over where we stopped just so I could show you a little bit. And then you're just going to pull it over. And then again, I did mark the marks. You might want to, if this is your first time trying to do anything like this, you might want to mark where your 1/4 inch is on each point with your friction pen. And it definitely doesn't have to be perfect, because there's a lot of stretching and pulling. Just do your best. So see, there's that corner. And I had a little bit of a little pucker right there. And after I get done, I might go back and look at all of them and make sure there's none that are super crazy, and I might do an extra little stitch right there. But for right now, I'm just gonna keep on trucking. Camera just a little bit. I'm afraid you're seeing my hand more than the actual binding here. And you can kind of play with it a little bit. You might like it better to not really pull up the presser foot and just kind of ooch it over. Oh, I just naturally, I'm so used to doing it. So when you're pulling it, you just kind of want to make sure that it gets as straight as you can. And you can even put your stitch length. Mine is like a 2. I might even lower it a little bit, maybe 1.8. Because that'll help a little bit with the corners. Okay, here we go. think when you go this way, it's better to lift up your presser foot, and when you're going the other way, it's a little bit easier. So this way, when we go back this way, if you leave it, oh darn it, if you leave it down and just pull it that way. But then when you go back to the right, you kind of have to pick it up because it's, all right, there, I remembered. All right, we are doing so good. Look how fun it is. Okay, we're halfway. Okay, so I'm at the end here, and the reason why I wanted to be on a straight end is because I am going to simply, I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna go around the edge just a little bit. And so this is not how I normally do binding at the end, but this is what I am going to do today. Okay, so now we're at the around the edge on this side and on the other side. And what I am going to do is I'm going to get it to lay flat on both sides like that. And then I'm going to connect them. I'm going to cut 1/4 of an inch right here and 1/4 of an inch right here. And then I'm just going to connect them. Because normally when you do binding you have quite a bit of extra space in between the two lines so that you can flip and move things. But since I don't have that, I'm just going to very carefully trim it 1/4 of an inch, and I am just going to use, oh look, there's my black pen I was looking for. I am just going to trim it 1/4 of an inch away from my fold that I just made. I don't know if I was out of the camera range, sorry. So I've got it folded right there, and I'm just going to cut it 1/4 of an inch away. And then the same thing on this side. And since this is cut on the bias, there's a little bit of stretch. So if it's not perfect, I'm hoping it will be forgiving. All right, this is the first time I've ever done this, so let's see how it works. So basically, I'm going to take these two ends and I'm going to connect them. I might use a pen. Okay, it's going to be super awkward. Okay, I have enough to take my pin out. And now I'm going to come over here and line up that end. Trim it at 1/4 of an inch. And a hot damn, I think we did it, y'all. All right, so what we're gonna do, I'm actually gonna make it just a teeny bit smaller. So where my seam is, I'm just gonna sew in the side just a little bit more in, and then I'll trim it off. Okay, so now it is the right distance away. We're going to trim this extra piece just with the scissors. I'm going to trim it right on that stitch line. And I'm just going to fold it over. And then what we're going to do is go back in on the stitch. We're going to go back in right here on the stitch that we started, and I'm going to just stitch over it, and then I'm going to stitch to this line. All right, we're going to pivot. And then I went right over the other line, and we did it. Okay, so now back to where we went and we trimmed everything. Some of these corners may not be, they may be there might be too much there, because sometimes on the corners it's hard to get as close as you want to be. Some of them are going to be fine. But some of them, and because we made the binding 2 1/4. So what I'm going to do is before I press anything, I'm going to go back through and trim these corners up. And what I mean by that is I'm just going to take scissors and go back around so that there's not, so it's more curved. That way when you flip it over, there won't be as much fabric there to deal with. And so I might go use the rotary cutter. We'll see. But basically I'm just gonna go trim it a little closer. And then that will be perfect to go around. Actually, that's trimming just a little bit more than I like, so I may just trim around the corners. I think I'm probably just gonna trim around the corners like that, so they will fold over. Okay, I'm gonna go take an iron to it. But look how cute it's gonna look when it lays down. That's what it's gonna look like. When it's laying on your table. Okay, we are on to the hand binding part. So I will be back in the next video to show you that.